guy in a little coat. Bad guy in a little coat. Bad guy in a little coat. Bad guy in a little coat.
Chris would walk around saying, I'm a retard.
He never thought he was funny, which was bizarre because everybody always laughing whatever he said.
Am I funny? He goes, or am I just a fat, stupid guy?
He was the funniest guy in the room, and he just never felt like he was worth anything.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Madison native Chris Farley is remembered as a kind heart who always managed to make us laugh.
The Edgewood High graduate and Saturday Night Live star is laid to rest in a private service. Before giving the sermon, Farley's longtime priest and spiritual advisor summed up his funeral message.
We want to get across that we're hopeful that Chris is in a better place. We're thankful for what we received from him, that he was a human, that he struggled as we all struggled, and that's why I think he brought a lot of warmth to people, was able to make people laugh because we were able to see in ourselves Chris.
The death of Chris Farley in 1997 at the age of 33 was a tragedy which seemed inevitable to those who were closest to him. For years, Chris had been fighting a personal battle with addiction that was both fierce and all-consuming. He was plagued by self-doubt and insecurities, as despite the adoration of fans and the acclaim of his peers, he could never be convinced of his talent. The tragic ending of Chris's life stands in stark contrast with his beginning. Chris was born Christopher Crosby Farley on the 15th of February 1964 in Madison, Wisconsin. He was the middle child among 4 other siblings and grew up in a close-knit and loving Irish Catholic household. His father was a successful owner of an oil company which provided the family with a comfortable lifestyle. They could be described as embodying the American dream with their picturesque life in the suburbs. They shared a love for comedy. Their bonding experience revolved around taping and re-watching episodes of comedy classics, often quoting iconic sketches and jokes. But there were times when their constant need for laughter and humorous relief proved to be a hindrance. When facing serious challenges and obstacles in life, their tendency to turn everything into a joke could sometimes dismiss the gravity of the situation. They would use humor as a defense mechanism, avoiding confronting the serious issues. Chris's older brother Tom would later attest to this.
Do you know what trauma was like in my family, in the Farley family? Every time I tell this story, everyone's like, "Ooh, no, what?" I'm like, "No, it's not that." Trauma was that we literally had one emotion. I call it one bullet in our emotional, gun. One emotion that we used for everything. Obviously, that was humor. So if somebody was stressed out in my family, we laughed. If somebody fell and hurt themselves, we laughed. Not to be mean, we didn't like their pain. We didn't like seeing other people in pain, and we thought that our humor could bring them out of it. If somebody was frustrated, angry, we definitely laughed if they're angry. And if somebody was experiencing joy, we laughed, which isn't the same thing. We couldn't even go to the positive end. And we got obviously really good at it because all 3 of my brothers became professionals. Now my son's doing it. But we didn't develop any of these other emotions so that coping mechanism of humor turned into a trauma. And I'm literally at this webinar going, oh, that's it? That's what's going on? And I notice that now when we get, my sister particularly, she'll be talking about something. It's like, oh, so-and-so lost his job. I'm like, that's not funny, Barb.
Right.
But
I do the same stuff. My wife gets angry at me because I try to relate to my older daughter only with comedy.
Yeah.
And no matter what. And I think it's funny when I threaten to beat her. I think that's funny. I'm going to give you the old one too. And I've never touched my daughter violently.
No.
I think beating my kid sounds funny when I say it, but it's not funny.
It's not being perceived the same way. It's like when my kids,
she used to think it was funny. She doesn't think it's funny anymore.
When my kids were growing up with little kids and they're like, Daddy, I'm afraid of the dark. And I would go, oh, yeah, well, I would too if I had that under my bed.
Right.
These kids are terrified now.
Right.
You didn't help them. You made it worse.
Right.
And I didn't get it. I didn't know. That's how I
Because we want to relate and we want to make someone feel comfortable. And in both of our experiences, comedy brought people close to us and it disarmed them. And Chris was one of the great masters. I mean, it's amazing that your brother was one of the great masters at this.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, and humor is that power. It really is one of the greatest emotions to manage our emotions. But there's also other things too, like empathy and all these other things that can manage your emotions too.
In 1975, Saturday Night Live made its television debut. Among those tuning in were the Farley brothers, who became devoted fans from the very beginning. However, one person in particular stood out to 11-year-old Chris, John Belushi. John Belushi had a brief yet impactful career in the entertainment industry. He rose to fame as the original cast member on SNL and became known for his fearless and wild comedic performances. He then went on to star in hit films such as Animal House and The Blues Brothers, alongside SNL co-star and close friend Dan Aykroyd. However, Belushi's life was cut short when he died of an accidental drug overdose at the age of 33 in 1982. Chris had been in awe of Belushi ever since he first saw him, and his fascination with the comedian would only grow stronger with age. In fact, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that Chris had a lifelong obsession with Belushi. He wanted to emulate everything about him. However, this obsession with Belushi also had a darker side. He romanticized Belushi's death and often talked about how he would like to go out in the same fashion just like his idol. John Belushi's brother Jim spoke about Chris's unhealthy infatuation with John.
I love Chris. I felt a special connection to him because he had such a special connection and desire and love for my brother John.
Yeah.
So when he would see me, he would light up, and I'd be like, "Chris, I'm not John."
but you knew him.
Man, I know, but he was so great. It was so great. I know. Anyway, he kept going on about John. See, I know you got to stop. You got to stop chasing him, Chris. He's gone. I know, but I love him so much. He was so good. I said, Chris, you can't follow John. You can't follow his track. The guy did drugs. He's dead. You've got to stop.
So obsessed with John.
It's like he wanted to be John.
Yeah.
Addiction is an obsessive behavior.
Yeah.
And it just extended into obsessing about John.
Another big influence on Chris was his father Thomas Farley Sr., who played a significant role in shaping Chris as a person. Thomas Farley was a large man with a larger-than-life personality, a booming voice and a strong presence. The pair would have a close relationship throughout Chris's life. Chris always valued his father's opinion, once saying the only person he's really trying to make laugh is his dad at home. He had a deep respect for his father, which sometimes bordered on fear, according to his longtime friend and colleague David Spade.
We had hard lines for the people listening. And so you have a phone in your dressing room and you can call your friends after the show. Did you see the show or whatever? And one time he was on the phone with his dad. And I think it's common knowledge he was not scared of his dad, but his dad was a very important.
Very respectful. Yeah.
Yeah. And he knew not to act up around him. And he's talking to him. And then Marcy or Aaron walked by and they kicked the cord accidentally. And he goes, hello? And he flipped out. He goes, he's going to think I hung up on him.
Oh, God.
Terrified. Everyone's like, sorry, just call him back. No, you don't get it. We were like, oh, my God. So that was a quick window into like, ooh, yeah.
Yeah. Woo! A lot going on.
Let me ask you about that character we just saw, the Matt Foley guy, the motivational speaker. Yeah. Now, did they write that? Did you come up with that character? Is it one of your own?
Actually, I did it at Second City. Bob Odenkirk wrote that for me. But it's a little bit of my dad. It's a lot of bit of my dad. He used to start out slow and then build to a rage. Like, I thought I told you boys to shovel the rock. Get out there!
Thomas Farley's influence can be seen in many of Chris's iconic characters, such as motivational speaker Matt Foley, who shared his voice and commanding presence, and it is evident that Thomas Farley's humour and personality greatly impacted Chris's comedic style.
I got in a lot of trouble at school. I remember that one time the nuns were all around me and my mom, and they're in the middle, and they said, Mrs. Farley, the students at school are laughing at Christopher, not with him. So there. Yeah, thanks you guys.
Chris attended parochial schools in Madison along with his siblings, including Edgewood High School of the Sacred Heart. He was often the target of name-calling and bullying at school due to his weight. His brothers were always there to defend him, but Farley soon learned to use humour as a defence and began making jokes about his weight himself before anyone else could. He was a bright student, but when it came to concentrating on his schoolwork, Chris struggled with maintaining focus in class or completing assignments on time. However, outside of the classroom, Chris excelled at sports. He had a natural athleticism despite his size and had a particular talent for rugby, and he was a valuable member of the school team. Many false tales have been told about Farley's time at school, but one in particular story turned out to be true. Chris was once dared by a classmate to flash one of his fellow female students. Without hesitation, Chris went through with the dare, and as a result, he was expelled from school. His parents then proceeded to send Chris to La Lumiere, a private boarding school in Indiana, hoping that the strict and disciplined environment would help him focus and concentrate on his studies. In 1982, Chris attended Marquette, a Jesuit university in Milwaukee. As his grades didn't make the cut for admission, he firstly had to attend a preliminary summer school in which students could earn their way into the oncoming class. Chris passed and started attending business study classes, but he soon grew bored and disinterested. When Chris should have been studying, he instead found himself engrossed in the pages of Wired, a book about the life and death of John Belushi. This was the only book Chris read at university, and it had a profound effect on him. All Chris's addictive tendencies were validated, and he began to indulge in these substances himself. Despite being exposed to alcohol from a young age with a father who was a functioning alcoholic, Chris didn't partake in drinking until the age of 18. And it was while he was out drinking with friends that he stumbled upon an open mic night at Wimpy's Hunt Club. Even though he had no formal training and no idea what he was doing, he took a leap of faith and performed a comedy routine in front of an audience of only 9 people. Although the crowd was small, this experience ignited a flame within him. And when a dean at Chris's university recognised his expressive nature and believed he had a natural talent for performing, with the dean's encouragement, Chris decided to audition for the college rendition of Sam Shepard's play, Curse of the Starving Class. Chris got the part and his performance got a good reception from the audience, and from that moment on, Chris delved into the world of performing. For their major or minor, theatre students were also required to take dance, so Chris, undeterred, took ballet classes, which would contribute to his physicality which he had later become known for.
Hey!
After dropping out of business studies, Chris had a brief period working for his father's business, as he wasn't sure how to pursue his passion for comedy as a profession. However, everything changed when he discovered Second City, the improvisational theatre troupe based in Chicago. Second City had been a starting point for many comedians, award-winning actors, and directors in show business, including Bill Murray, Gilda Radner, John Candy, Dan Aykroyd, and his hero, John Belushi. So Chris left his hometown of Madison, Wisconsin, and headed to the bustling city of Chicago. His family believed that he would eventually return home, but to their surprise, he never did. As soon as Chris arrived at Second City, he was filled with excitement and eagerness to start. He wasted no time in expressing his desire to get on stage.
I didn't like him. I did not like Chris Farley when I first met him, or for the first few weeks. I just had such trouble getting this guy to calm down and stop trying to be funny. Chris was dying to perform. he just would not stop, and nobody treats me that way. So finally, I thought I would threaten him. I said, I'll tell you what, if you go on my stage and play tonight, and you screw up, you'll never work in this town. You want to take that chance? And before I could finish the sentence, he was walking to the stage. All right. He showed me what he needed to show me, and he calmed down. I had Dell come to the class one day, and I said, you have to see someone. And Dell looked at him and said, oh, that's the next Belushi.
Despite just starting out, he quickly became a standout performer, and with the seal of approval coming from Dale Close, who had coached Chris's idol John Belushi, Chris was on the road to stardom. This caused other performers at Second City to feel envy and resentment towards Chris, but he also met two future friends and colleagues, Bob Odenkirk and Tim Meadows. Bob Odenkirk, who later went on to achieve fame playing Saul Goodman on Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, wrote the Matt Foley sketch for Chris while they were both at Second City.
I could probably do a whole interview with you on like the van down by the river, working with Chris Farley.
I wrote that alone in my apartment in Chicago when we were doing Second City together. And it's one of the few sketches, and I've written thousands of sketches, but not many of them sort of are done the way you wrote them when you sat down and wrote them. And that's one of them. That motivational speaker came out just like that. Perfect. And of course, Chris elevates it to a whole another place.
Did you ever see Farley doing that character, or you sat
I
in...
saw him do, he played a coach. We were doing the improvs at Second City, and he played a coach, and we were doing a don't do drugs rally or something on stage. And he did a coach. You kids, you think you're going to do amazing things. You're all smoking the pot and you're all doing the drugs. And it was funny. I went home that night, and I'll never forget sitting there with a yellow legal pad and just writing out. I grew up in Naperville, Illinois, and when I was a kid, there was this contingent of hippies, Howard, who used to hang out on the bridge down by the river.
Right.
And I just pictured this guy, and Tony Robbins was becoming big at the time. And I thought, what about a motivational speaker who's living in that? And I pictured that very place in my hometown. And he uses himself as like, I'm a piece of shit. You want to end up like me. And I wrote that out. My daughter once asked me, what's the most fun you've had in show business? And I said, without a doubt, it was Second City Theater main stage doing that sketch 7 times a week with Chris right in your face. And he would not stop until he made every actor on stage laugh. That was kind of his goal. You get in everyone's face until they died.
And it must be surreal when you saw it on TV and no one could keep a straight face. Yeah. Farley was doing that same thing. He made Spade laugh. He made Christina Applegate laugh.
I've never seen an audience react. And, you know, at Second City, we're not famous. The actors on that stage are not famous.
Right.
But I've never seen an audience go from, you know, just an audience who's enjoying a show to like worshiping a guy in, 4 minutes. They went from, we're just enjoying a comedy show to, that's the funniest person I've ever seen on planet Earth.
Did Farley come up to you afterwards and say, Bob, I want to give you a kiss?
He did that to everybody. But yes, Chris was incredibly appreciative. But he also was he really was that way to everybody. I mean, he was a big heart that was always exposed. And of course, that's not the healthiest thing to be, I think.
Chris's rise at Second City was fast, and it wasn't long before talent scouts from Saturday Night Live took notice. Then in early 1990, along with Chris Rock, Farley was announced as a new cast member. Conan O'Brien, who was working at SNL as a writer at the time, recalls the first time he met Farley.
So I'll never forget, I came down to 9 and I walked in and there's this guy sitting there, and Chris Farley's such a presence that you can tell this is a special person. He, like in all the best ways, he's sitting there and I started having fun with him.
Thrown together.
We were just riffing with each other, and he had such puppy dog energy. He had incredible like puppy dog energy. And he was new. He had been at SNL. He had been at Second City. and he had worked with Odenkirk. So Bob came in. I think Bob gave me a heads up. My friend Chris is coming, but I didn't really know Chris. So we start just goofing around like kids, and we are kids. And so then I said, I'll give you a tour. You want to tour the place? And he went, sure, boss, sure. He goes right into character. So I said, come with me, kid. And I lead him through the studio, and it's a totally bullshit tour. I'm doing the stuff that you guys would, see that guy over there? That's cameraman. You're going to like cameraman. And someone would be lifting a boom, and I'd say, up with that boom, guys, let's go. And he was cracking up, and then he was doing it too. And he was playing the part. He's such a good, natural, fun improviser of the kid from the Midwest who just got off the bus and has a cardboard suitcase. Oh, wow. Golly gee, really, mister? And he was doing all that, and I was being a big over-the-top city slicker blowhard. And I had so much fun with him. And then he was an absolute delight, just such a delightful presence on the show. We all remember that. I think that Chippendale sketch is where things really blew up for him that Jim Downey did. I believe it was Jim Downey. And I remembered
early on.
Yeah, I remembered standing. I'm probably 15 feet away from Patrick Swayze and Chris Farley when he rips his shirt off and does that. And I mean, it was just an atomic bomb blast in 88. Such screams of laughter.
Working for the Weekend comes on.
Yeah, everybody's working. And and of course, Farley doesn't just commit, he goes to 190.
Chris's big break on SNL was the Chippendale sketch he performed with Patrick Swayze. When the sketch was written for him, Chris called his old Second City boss, Chelna Hepburn, and said they're making fun of the fat guy. This showed Chris had insecurities about bearing all on television, but Chelna reassured Chris of his talent and that he should take the opportunity. In an interview, Bob Odenkirk revealed that he wished a different sketch was written to showcase Farley's talent, instead of one that mocked his weight and appearance.
Yeah, you always were critical of that sketch, the famous sketch with Patrick Swayze, where Chris gets up and uses his belly and his body, and the joke basically is he's fat.
That Chippendale sketch is kind of unique. Chris didn't feel like he was on sure footing at SNL yet. That was the first big sort of present moment for him. So if it hadn't been the first one, that might have made it a little less egregious to me, but it was. Maybe it's just me watching it, but I always felt like that moment where he pulls his shirt off, there's almost a hesitation I see in his eyes, and even the smile or the kind of expression on his face, I just get a queasy feeling that he knows a good chunk of this reaction is because of my body shape, and he's loving the laugh. He's loving the reaction that he knows he's going to get because he got it anytime he did that or anything like it. But he's feeling like Chris would walk around saying, I'm going to use words you're not supposed to use. I'm a retard. And fatty fall down, he would say all the time. He would fall down and say fatty fall down. And things like he would refer to himself with derogatory terms. And so just that moment, I just hated that moment. I still do. I wish it hadn't been the first big thing that happened to him. And I don't like that, people pretend that somehow the big laugh from that sketch was the concept of it, which was the judges can't really say why Patrick Swayze is a better Chippendales dancer than Chris Farley. I get it that's the joke, but there are people, the audience is responding to his physical.
In your mind, it's a cheap laugh, and also
it told Chris exactly what he shouldn't be hearing, which is that's why you're funny, because you're stupid and big, and not, that's not why he was lovable and funny and worth watching and worth being around.
You are in the Belushi role and that sort of thing. Do you feel any responsibility being the heavyset one?
Great, Norman. Now everyone's gonna know I have a slight weight problem, a salt imbalance, if you will.
Chris had always struggled with his weight. Despite his successes in other aspects, he often felt that his weight was his biggest obstacle in life. When he was younger, he went as far as to say that being overweight was the worst thing about his life.
I'll have this side. I have active glands. I'm gonna have the marinara shells with with some Barney Fife sauce.
Ever since he was a small child, Chris had always been known for having a huge appetite. Food was not just a source of fuel for him, but also a comfort. Whenever he felt sad or stressed, he would turn to food for solace. His friends were amazed by the amount of food he could consume in one sitting.
Now, Cohen, do you remember Farley's order when we would go out?
Yeah. Chris Farley loved to eat. But to a degree that I've never seen since. I mean, by any human being.
Yeah, he literally, it was the funniest because the waiter would make the rounds of the, like 4 or 5 of us, and you'd give your order, and you'd feel Farley's energy like, all right, come on, let me go already. And then he would order his food, and then he would say, you got the T-bone steak, yeah, okay, and do you have and he'd name like 6 things, and you were like, wow, he's getting 6 things. And then he would say, okay, I'll take 2 of those.
What? Two of the whole thing.
Double down, and he'd bring out 2 steaks for him, and 2 salads and 2 sides of every side he ordered, and it was like the quietest Farley. He would just calmly just be like, and if you didn't want to say like, hey man, you didn't even want to make a joke about it. You were just like, all right, let him do his thing. Or something.
Do his thing.
From the time Chris was a child, he could see how his father's size made him a target for rude comments and judgmental glances from others.
But I do remember him telling me, when he was a boy, his father was like 600 pounds.
I didn't know that.
And I remember him telling me that as a boy, he would walk with his father, and all he would hear was the talk,
People goofing on the dad?
Yeah, behind
that was his sadness.
As a young boy, and I don't think that ever left him.
Once Chris got his breakthrough at SNL, he quickly established himself as one of the most popular cast members. His versatility allowed him to shine in a variety of sketches. Chris had a great rapport with all of his co-stars, but one person he struck up a particularly close friendship with was David Spade.
I met him at the Omni Hotel. I was a featured player writer, and I had done 4 shows, and I came back over the summer, and Chris Rock were hired.
I was at that hotel. I was there.
Yeah, remember that's where they put us up. Soup was like $8, and Rob Schneider kept ordering, and I go, "Don't charge that to Lauren. We'll get fired immediately." So I'd heard about Chris. I heard his audition was funny. I heard he was good, and I met him that first day, and I think we walked over together, and we just gravitated. He wasn't terrifying at first.
No, that look, yeah.
He's the most lovable, like fun, happy Madison, Wisconsin guy, and then
Midwestern.
Yeah, he just went over, and I was from Arizona. We talked about that, and then we just sort of bonded. But he really took to everyone. Everyone loved him right away. I think the funnier part is the people that went to college with him. And he was a little bit of a boozy Susie, if I may be so bold. And those people going, I'm sure if you took a poll, who will not make it in show business in this school, they would say, well, not him. He's not going to go anywhere. He's too crazy.
Have a seat, gentlemen.
You guys, hello, Chris.
Oh, David.
So you have to pretend to be friends one more time?
Hey, boys.
They had a playful, teasing dynamic, and were known to bicker and tease each other, just like any married couple would. Chris had a tendency to get jealous whenever David had a new girlfriend. It was almost like he was protective of their friendship and didn't want anyone else to come between them. But it wasn't just limited to that. He also got envious when David would hang out with other people, especially in the entertainment industry. During the filming of Tommy Boy with co-star Rob Lowe, David decided to go out for a drink with him without informing Chris. This small act triggered Chris's jealousy.
The famous Tommy Boy fight about, do you remember? I remember it happening.
Oh, it was about you.
It was about me,
yes. Right? We would fly on a little puddle jumper private jet. I think that's the only time I've ever been on a private jet. It was
you had to do the show.
Wasn't, yeah.
You did SNL while we were shooting Tommy Boy.
I know, you hear about like Pete Davidson skipped SNL to go on a date to a wedding. It's like, that would never happen.
Never.
Or he's shooting a movie and going to fashion shows. We're like, are you shitting me? It just must be different over there because we couldn't get out a full week to do a movie that Lauren was producing.
Yeah.
So Tommy Boy was Monday, Toronto, Tuesday, Toronto, Wednesday, fly into New York to do read-through, fly back after read-through.
Yep.
Thursday, shoot, Toronto, Friday, Saturday, New York.
Yep.
And then at 1 a.m., we'd fly back to Toronto and shoot Sunday, Monday, Tuesday again. So, and it was getting freezing and it was tough. He was gaining weight. I was losing weight. The weight stayed on the frame of the screen, but it was
just
switched.
Different parts of the screen.
You're like the number 10. So we're in this little puddle jumper, which probably now with my vast knowledge of planes, it was probably a Lear 25. It was really like an MRI with wings.
Yeah.
it was just two of us hunched in facing each other, and then they'd have a handler for Farley, Eric Newman.
Oh, Jesus.
And he would sit next to us, and Farley would reach under the seat and go, I eat when I'm nervous. And then, because there was turbulence, and then we'd be in the car driving, and he'd have another Butterfinger. I'm like, are you nervous to be in the car now? And he's like, a little. So he's just eating all the time. But
a little.
But that particular time, we're all burned out. I'm sure it was toward the end of the shoot. We're both fucking dying. It's like an old married couple. We're fucking fighting all the time. We're never apart. So he goes, when's the call tomorrow? I'm like, I don't know, 6. Or it's probably 1 a.m. we're landing. Or whatever it was. We landed whenever. And he goes, I'm feeling sick. I think I got the flu or something. I'm going to go in and crash. I go, all right. Not saying what I'm doing. I'm just saying you're out. Got it. So I get to the Four Seasons. I think I call you and say, what are you doing? Want to go have a drink? So we go just to the bar and have one drink. Amstel Light, whatever. We don't tell Farley. Of course we don't. We see him every goddamn fucking day. And then the next day, I get up, I go in makeup. I go to his room and he already left, which is weird. Because that's what housekeeping started. Housekeeping! And then he would go, ugh! I go, you know, it's me every day. We put that in the movie because it was just happening every day and he fell for it every single day. So then we get to the set and he's looking at me in the makeup mirror and I'm like, what's up, everybody? And he's just staring at me, biting his lip, which is about to have a fight.
Oh, that was the about to have
that's his tell.
Oh yeah, that's right. His tell. He put the tongue on. That's so right. God, I'd forgotten that.
And he looks at me and he goes, I go, how's your night? And he goes, good. I go, you feeling all right? And he goes, how's Rob Lowe? And I go, I guess he had heard that we were together. I don't even know how he heard. And I go, oh, I haven't seen him yet. How's Rob Lowe? I go, how's Rob Lowe? I don't know. What do you mean? He goes, where's Rob Lowe? Where's your fucking precious Rob Lowe? I go, I don't know. And he goes, how was drinks last night? And I go, oh, is that what we're getting at? Yeah, I don't know. It was all right. We had a drink, went to bed. Oh, so you call fucking Rob Lowe so you can have a little date with him, but I'm not, you don't call me? I go, I don't call you. I don't know. Remember the last word off the wire was you were sick. You were going home, you were sick, and we had a big day today. So you call Rob Lowe? I go, yes, and you can call him Rob. I think we all know who it is at this point. And then we get on the set, and he's still just staring at me smoking, and we're outside of a scene. I can remember this.
I do too.
And inside, I think it's you and Bo, maybe.
I remember it.
Maybe Denny. I don't know who was in the scene.
It was Bo. I remember.
And so
we're at the house.
Pete Siegel's the director. So we're outside waiting. I'm dying, and we're freezing, and we're waiting for some camera problem. So I'm eating a tuna fish sandwich on the ground.
This is the part I knew. I knew about the tuna fish sandwich.
Yeah. I'm trying to live because I have to eat all the time. And Farley's just over me, staring at me, smoking a cigarette. How's Rob Lowe? And I'm like, I don't know if we're talking about this more or I don't know what to say. Rob's great. He's in the scene. I'm going over my lines. And then he can't stand that it's not going anywhere. So he comes and steps on my hand, my tuna, with his big fucking boots.
Those big fucking
and I
Red
go,
Wing boots?
Ow! With all his thousands of pounds. And I go, ow, you fuck. And then I have my Diet Coke in my hand, so I just throw it on him. And he gets up and he pushes me down these stairs. There's like 4 stairs. And right when I get to the bottom and stand up, like, are we in a fight? And they go, action on the walkie. And we just stare at each other. And then we turn and we walk in. And I walk in the door, and this is my recollection. I walk in the door, and I see you guys, and someone says something, and I'm just staring, and my heart's beating, and then Pete goes, Spades line? And then someone yells it, and I still don't say it. And then I go, fuck. And then I just walk out. And Pete goes, taking a 5. Because no one knew what was going on.
No one knew what was going on. I remember. I thought you'd had a heart attack.
I went to my trailer. Farley went to his. I go, oh, we'll be shut down for days over this because I'm not talking to this asshole for like ever. And then Fred came in my room.
Fred Wolf, the writer.
Fred Wolf, the writer. Bob Weiss came in, the
producer. Henchman.
Pete probably went to you and Farley and me, and they did the rounds. Farley went out and tackled Skippy.
Wow.
Because he was so mad he had to hit a guy his size.
But if you just wait.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. You're very heavy. What'd you say, Mom?
What? I said bye-bye. I just said bye-bye 40 times in a row. Why would I say anything else? It doesn't make sense. Did I just say something without knowing it? No, go, bye-bye.
The pair were once inseparable, but things began to change as Chris's drug addiction intensified. This had a detrimental effect on their friendship, as Chris's behaviour became more unpredictable and he started surrounding himself with negative influences. David found it increasingly difficult to watch his friends spiral out of control. Eventually, the two drifted apart, with David wanting to distance himself from an unhealthy and potentially dangerous situation Chris had found himself in. Chris had struggled with loneliness during his time at SNL. While on the show, he found a sense of camaraderie and purpose among his fellow cast members and crew. But when he was away from work, he would often turn to alcohol and drugs to cope with the feelings of isolation. After rising to fame, Chris found it increasingly difficult to develop meaningful relationships. He once joked that while he was growing up, he only dated girls who looked like him with a wig on. So when he started getting attention from attractive and possibly insincere individuals, he became wary and suspicious. This made it even harder for him to open up and form genuine connections with others, ultimately affecting his relationships and adding a new layer of difficulty to his already busy and demanding lifestyle. This caused a darkness within him that often clouded his perception of love and romance. He was never able to fully trust beautiful women, always questioning their motives and wondering whether they were truly genuine. With regards to beautiful women, he once remarked that he didn't know whether to kiss them or hit them over the head with a bottle.
Don't be afraid.
You sure are pretty.
Thank you. You sure are funny.
I thought you were going to, you sure are fat.
I wouldn't do that to you. I wouldn't. I used to be fat. We'll talk later. I can actually show you how that works.
That's right. How you doing? How you doing? You sure are pretty. My name's Chris Farley from movie Tommy Boy. Maybe you'd like to go on a date ski.
Chris was always awkward around women, acting not dissimilar to a bashful child. This was not just for television, as his friends would attest to him also acting the same way, away from the cameras. He had a shy and self-conscious personality when it came to women, and often struggled with confidence in romantic situations. Chris would also struggle with repetitive behaviours, and it wasn't until after his death that friends and families realised these patterns were actually symptoms of OCD. As a child while playing basketball, there was one ritual he had before taking a shot that his siblings found odd. He would always lick the ball before shooting, a necessary ritual to ease his anxiety and ensure that the shot will be successful. His symptoms of OCD became worse when he was at Second City. He found himself constantly touching the floor before clapping his hands 3 times, and then licking left and right and repeating the process until it felt just right. He explained that he felt a strong need to even everything up. Also, on an episode of Saturday Night Live, whilst Chris appeared in a sketch with Steve Martin, one small detail may have gone unnoticed by most. As the two walked down a hallway filled with pictures, Chris could be seen touching each and every one of them. This seemingly innocent action was actually a manifestation of Farley's OCD, as he had to touch every picture every time he walked down that hallway. Chris lived in constant fear of losing his job in SNL after his boss Lorne Michaels had warned him that he didn't want another Belushi situation on his hands, and that he would not hesitate to fire Chris if he tested positive for drugs. Chris would take to carrying a pot of a friend's urine sample around in case of an impromptu drugs test. But despite several warnings from Lorne Michaels, Chris's reckless behaviour continued to escalate. It soon became clear that he had a serious problem with drug and alcohol abuse. As a result, Lorne had no choice but to suspend Chris from SNL. This happened multiple times during his time on the show, but Lorne always felt sorry for Chris and didn't want to let him go. Eventually, Chris was sent to a drug and rehabilitation centre, which proved to be a crucial turning point in his life. He was able to confront his addiction and work towards recovery. After Chris got sober, Lorne Michaels wasted no time in offering him a starring role in the movie Tommy Boy. This was a huge opportunity for Chris, as it was his first leading role in a film. He had previously only made cameo appearances in several of his friends' movies. But even more special was the fact he got to share the screen with his close friend David Spade. Chris got to show not only his comedic performance on the big screen, but he also showed an incredible talent to be a serious actor.
My dad gave me this boat. We'd come out here late at night when there's no one else on the lake, and then he'd be over there on the shore and he'd yell, "Quit playing with your dinghy." I'm gonna really miss him.
The movie may have only made $32 million at the domestic box office and was never released internationally, but it made its fortune on home video sales. Film producers saw the potential of Chris and David as a comedy duo. Tommy Boy had launched Chris into stardom.
Friend Chris Farley. Oh my God! How you doing, buddy? You all excited about your big movie?
Oh man,
Things are getting better and better for you, aren't they?
Yeah, I love it.
What about? Do you get a sense now of how your life might change with the fame that is going to come with the release of this film? Not that you're not famous now, but you know it's going to be more and more.
Well, I don't know. Sometimes people come up to me and like,
asked for an autograph. One time I was with my dad, and
what's your dad's name?
My dad's name's Tom.
Tom?
Yeah. And then the chef at the restaurant came up and asked for an autograph.
That's nice.
And so I signed it, and then my dad goes, "What'd you put on there?" And I go, "I just wanted an autograph, so I signed my name." He goes, "Oh, for God's sakes, make it personal. These folks are coming up there, taking a risk and asking you, make it personal, for God's sakes. Just sign your name like a jackass." But I don't know. It's like, it happens. Sometimes people come up to an autograph, but it's not going to change me. I'm going to do the same old Chris.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to happen here. Oh! I've broken your equipment.
Are you all right?
Yes, sir.
Are you going to be okay?
Yeah, I thought that.
Well, here, you know, there you go. You can have one of those.
It's local. I like chocolate.
Oh, man. Chris, you're from, I think you was from Wisconsin, right? Madison, Wisconsin?
Yes, sir.
Beautiful state and a very nice city. Madison, I think, is the capital of Wisconsin, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry about Yeah. Madison's capital.
What about your mom? You mentioned your dad. How's your mom doing?
Oh, she's great.
What kind of a life did you and your folks have when you were a kid?
Oh, Lord, Dave, I put them through hell. Sorry about that.
In 1995, Chris was let go from SNL. This decision was likely due to a combination of the producers wanting to shake up the cast and Farley's busy film schedule. However, Farley was not happy about leaving SNL, as he's considered the cast and crew to be like a family to him. He enjoyed the close-knit community within SNL, and this only exacerbated his loneliness. After the relative success of Tommy Boy, Chris and David Spade were quickly cast in another film together, Black Sheep.
Whoa! Man! Oh, my God! What is that? It's Ozzy Osbourne. Whoa! Oh, my God!
Whoa.
I think it's gone.
I hate those damn things.
Oh, man! It bit me! I'm gonna get rabies!
Chris was not happy with the way Black Sheep was received by audiences and critics. This unmet expectation, combined with the stressful nature of Hollywood and the pressure to maintain his success, caused Farley to relapse into substance abuse. Since his 1990 hiring for Saturday Night Live, Chris had been on a tumultuous journey trying to overcome his addiction. He had attended countless drug counseling meetings and spent nearly $500,000 on various forms of therapy in an effort to get sober and stay sober. It was revealed that Farley was using heroin during his time at SNL. One of his former colleagues, Jim Brewer, recalls a particularly dark incident at a read-through at the show.
He called me that week, and he was out, and he's like, "Can he come in the hotel room?" And I was like, "Chris, this is a long week, man. You gotta rehearse." And I could tell who was in the room with him, enabling him, and he went into the bathroom. He goes, "Jimmy, I gotta ask something." I said, "What?" He goes, "Am I funny?" I went, "What?" He goes, "Am I funny?" I said, "What do you mean are you funny?" He goes, "Or am I just a fat, stupid guy?"
Oh, man.
And I spent 20 minutes to a half hour trying to talk him off a ledge and what I heard about him as a person and blah, blah, blah. And he goes, girls don't like me. I have to get hookers and I'm just fat and stupid. I went, "No, you're not. No, you're not." And I'll never forget the next day we went and did a read through and they brought in some new writers just to write for him. And every sketch was a fat, stupid guy, which whatever, that's what he sold. And there was a point where he was doing the readings and a huge, like the size of half my pinky, blood vessel, coke or heroin, whatever it was, came flying out of his nose and and Bounce, the reason why I laugh is just it was the craziest thing I've seen, and he just scooped it up, continuing reading and acting out, and they put it back in his pocket. And the whole room watched this.
Wow.
And again, you think at some point someone would have said, "We can't. What are we doing?"
After the relative success of each of his movies, Chris was solidified as a bankable star. This success led to Farley being offered $6 million to star in Beverly Hills Ninja. Despite having reservations about the film and the role, Farley's father advised him not to turn down such a lucrative offer.
Do not worry about Haru. This ninja knows no fear. You see, I am a trained master in each of the weapons of battle.
In 1997, Chris returned to host SNL. His well-documented struggles with substance abuse and erratic behaviour had caused concern amongst his colleagues, and some even questioned whether he should have been allowed to host the show.
Watching Chris Farley come to host, there was a couple.
Yeah.
But watching Chris Farley come to host, and he had a serious high alert drug issue going on. And what blew my mind was, Chris Rock was there, and I respect him as a comedian and blah, blah, blah. But I was like, what are you doing here? And he's like, I'm here just in case. And then he had like this nurse 24/7. He clearly needed help.
Yeah.
It was beyond obvious. They had a 24-hour nurse, and it was already a stockpile of, is anyone going to step forward and say, what are we doing this for? A rating? Because he needs to promote a movie? The man's going to be dead soon. Does anyone care about his soul?
Playing on his real-life speculation and controversy, the sketches for that night's episode revolved around the question of whether Farley would even show up at all. It was clear that he was struggling with his health and his well-being. He appeared to be in a very bad way. With his weight noticeably heavier than ever before, his voice was also hoarse and he seemed to be having trouble catching his breath. It was clear that he was struggling with some deep-seated issues that wouldn't be helped by the intense pressure and scrutiny of live television. This appearance on the show turned out to be the last time many of Chris's friends saw him alive. Chris lived in constant fear of failure and disapproval of others, leading him to overcompensate with substance abuse. Despite the success he had achieved in his career, Chris was plagued by self-doubt and a constant need for validation. He constantly felt like he wasn't living up to his potential and that he was just fooling everyone around him. From the 14th of December 1997, Chris's behaviour took a downward turn as he embarked on a 3-day binge of drugs and alcohol. He was seen at various clubs and pubs around Chicago where by all accounts he was his usual lively self. Then on the 16th, Chris contacted an escort service and spent the day with a woman named Autumn. According to the escort, Chris seemed more interested in taking drugs than anything else. She also noted that Chris appeared to be in a manic state. When she announced she was leaving, in a desperate attempt to make her stay, he resorted to doing a comedy pratfall, where he passed out soon after, uttering his last words, "Don't leave me." She then proceeded to remove Chris's watch off of his wrist, take this picture of the unconscious Farley, and left. The following afternoon, Chris's brother John found him dead. Chris was still lying 10 feet from the door, wearing sweatpants and an open-button shirt. John then placed a rosary cross into Chris's open palm. Chris was a devout Catholic and his faith was a fundamental part of his life. Even if he had been out partying the night before, he would always make it a priority to make it to Mass in his best suit.